It's another beautiful day for baseball in Los Angeles. And baseball podcast. Josh Schaefer and Blake Harris cover everything Dodgers right here on Inside the Ravine.
Unfortunately, it wasn't a painful nightmare. It's reality. The Dodgers are not playing postseason baseball today. Instead, they're sitting at home, figuring out which TV show they're going to binge next. Joining me this week on a brand new episode of Inside the Ravine is Josh Schaefer. I'm your host, Blake Harris. Josh, it's been a couple days. We've given ourselves some time to grieve, some time to look back, some time to figure out what went wrong. I think we're going to need a couple more weeks. We might need a couple more months, really, to let this sit in. But it's Tuesday today. Obviously, the Dodgers last played on Saturday. We recorded an episode. So it's been some time since we last talked. How you doing over there? How are we hanging in there?
Well, I'm certainly not doing well.
Yeah.
But no, life goes on, obviously. I mean, it's one of those things where you just get so frustrated by what happened. And I think that it was probably one of the more frustrating times as just a sports fan, because you knew what that team was capable of, and not even what that 2017 team with the Sports Illustrated cover best team ever was capable of, not what 2018 was capable of, not what 2019 was capable of. I mean, this is the best Dodgers team I think we've seen in a really long time, if not ever, in the regular season. And obviously it didn't work out. And there are a number of reasons it didn't work out, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But for that reason alone, that's why I think it's been so frustrating looking back on it. And you're right. You know, you say that like it wasn't just a nightmare. You know, it's one of those things where you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, it's just a bad dream. And you're like, no, it was not. They choked in spectacular fashion against the team they've dominated over the last 3 years, even in the postseason. So that's just kind of how the world turns, especially for Dodgers fans. But yeah, you know, there's still baseball on. I did not try to muster up the courage to watch any of those games the other day. My roommate has already gone back to playing his Dodgers season in the show, which takes courage, I think. But good for him. And you know what? We'll give it to the World Series, I think, until I really get back into it. I think that's how long it'll take. But yeah, I mean, it goes on. People try to talk trash in the office, and you're like, I agree with you. Whatever you say, You're right.
Yeah, that's the thing at this point. Like, you can only take it. Like, there's no defense. There's no, well, if this thing happens in game, it's like, no, you literally have to accept it. We have to accept defeat. Yeah, for all those that tuned into our previous episode following the game, which, if you're listening, is probably you, because we had a record number. Josh, I texted this to you yesterday, but nothing like setting the record for most viewers for an episode, and literally the worst possible episode imaginable. And like we talked about as well, I was so frustrated and upset, I didn't even bother to check my microphone settings, so it sounded like I was recording off my phone in the bathroom. So for everyone that was tuning in for the first time thinking, man, why does this guy sound like he's recording on his 2009 iPhone? Well, that's what happens when you're too upset to check the settings, because it was painful. So a lot to cover today. We're pretty much going to be going overall talking about the recap from this NLDS. Now, granted, it was only a 4-game series, so not a whole lot to recap. We're going to be given player grades from the playoffs, talking about each player that had an impact and giving them a grade 1 through 10 on how they performed. We're going to be talking about analytics or feeling the game. Now, Josh, I wrote an article on this yesterday, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to dive in on this with you in regards to just listening to computers, listening to what computers have to say when it comes to matchups, when it comes to bullpen, when it comes to lineup configuration. I want to talk about, should we listen to the computers and what they spew out, or should we have a feel for the game? And also, this is going to be a painful one. This isn't technically a draft, Josh. We could have made it a draft, but we're going to be talking about the worst Dodger playoff exits and postseason experiences, and where this ranks in regards to those. So not a draft per se, because I don't want to be like, well, with the 101, this is the easy pick, because then that's going to turn into just an absolutely painful draft. But we're going to be talking about where this ranks.
Yeah, make people vote on that list.
Yeah. See, I know this one's more painful for fans, so I'm going to go with the vote on this one. So make sure to stay tuned for all that. It's going to be a jam-packed episode. Before we get to that, make sure to follow Inside the Ravine on social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Inside the Ravine. You guys can also listen to the show wherever you get your podcasts, mainly on the Odyssey app, because this podcast is brought to you by Odyssey Sports, but we're also on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe, follow over there, leave us a review, let us know what you would like to hear us talk about during the offseason, because, Josh, we have 4 months until we get spring training baseball, so there is a lot to get to this offseason. But before we get to all our offseason content, we still got to talk about what went wrong for the Dodgers this postseason. Luckily, not too many more episodes of this. We might have a few more episodes bringing guests on where we can hear their reaction to the playoff exit, but this is probably going to be it for just the two of us talking about the postseason. Now, we're going to go game by game. Obviously, we're going to skip game one because, Josh, game one was the only game they'd come out with the victory. After going up 1-0 in the series, I'm sure we were both thinking, wow, this is great. Already up 1-0 on the series. This might be pretty easy the rest of the way. I posted my DJ video. It was fantastic, but little did we know that would be the last time that we'd posted. So we're going to move to game two, Josh. Again, we recap game two instantly once it ended, but now we've had, nearly a week to kind of sit back and react and figure out what went wrong. So the Dodgers lost 5-3 to the Padres. This is the game in which Clayton Kershaw got the start. He went 5 innings, allowed 3 runs, and then it was the bullpen that kind of blew the game later with Brusdar Graterol, with Blake Trinan. So, Josh, the first thing that I want to touch up on, looking back at this now, Clayton Kershaw went 5 innings, allowed 3 runs. Let's see, he made 80 pitches. But I believe he retired his final 9 hitters, so it was a rough patch early on. I want to say, the second, third inning was when things went wrong. So he allowed 2 runs in the third inning, but after that, he was able to shut things down. Looking back at this now, seeing that the bullpen had to go 4 innings in game 1, they had to go 4 innings in game 2, and obviously things went bad for Brusdar Graterol in the 6th, for Blake Trinan in the 8th. Do you throw Clayton Kershaw out there for another inning? The fact that he was mowing guys down and his pitch count was only at 80, where you try to conserve at least one bullpen arm there?
I don't know. I mean, see, the way that I look at it is likely Clayton Kershaw is not going to come back and pitch in the series, just the way that the series is set up with it being 5 games. Yeah. If this is a 7-game series, I think even more so get him out of the game. But given that this is only a 5-game series, and at this point, it's looking like, it might not be as easy as you thought it might be after the game 1 win, after going up 3-0. After game 1, people can go back and listen to the episode. And for those who did listen to the episode, we were a little speculative, but we were a little cautious. But we definitely said, Dodgers won without playing their best game. After 3 innings, that's when I was like, man, this actually might be kind of easy, at least in this first game. And it wasn't, obviously. So, yeah, I think that maybe you give him one more inning, at least see what he can do. I don't hate the decision to take him out. I don't think he had his best stuff, but I certainly don't think that the old cliche or the tired narrative of playoff Kershaw came out in this one, because again, Yu Darvish is going to get heralded for having a nice game and getting and having 5 good innings, and in reality, he and Kershaw pretty much had the exact same stat line. Across the board. You had 1 more strikeout, gave it 1 more hit. Both gave up the same amount of runs. 7 strikeouts to 6 strikeouts. Like, their first pitch strike rate was almost identical. So, and you threw more pitches, I believe. So, ultimately, I thought both pitchers were efficient. Maybe not in the way that I expected them to be. I expected both pitchers to maybe give up 1-2 runs through 5 innings and make it a little bit harder for both teams to score. In this one, both gave up 3 through 5 innings. So, it is what it is. But I thought this was a pretty even game all the way through. And you're right, it was the bullpen that kind of came in, and I don't want to say blew it for the Dodgers, because again, one of those runs, so Graterol comes in, gives up 2 hits, didn't have his best stuff, but didn't look terrible. Gave up 2 hits. Neither of the runs he gives up are earned. And then later,
this was I believe, the Trey Turner. I think this was the Trey Turner error, I believe. So that's the only. Again, Graterol wasn't great, but the run scores because of the Trey Turner error, which ended up giving them the lead.
Exactly, the run scores because of the Trey Turner error, and then later in the game, Trinan comes in and gives up the 1 solo home run. And as we said in the recap from the game 4, in the game 4 show, that's really the bullpen's only blemish up until that 7th inning of game 4. And it's 1 hit from Blake Trinan that just happened to be a Jake Cronenworth home run. So I don't really know. I mean, again, Kershaw, if you leave him in another inning, I don't know if that changes. Does that change the Trey Turner error? Does that change Gratterall's outing? Does that change his line? I don't really know. I don't know what changes from that game if you leave Kershaw in, so I'm fine with it because I thought he was okay, and I thought Yu Darvish was okay too. So, I don't know. I think that the makeup of Game 2 is mostly the Dodgers leaving runners in scoring position, going 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, where if they had one more hit, game's over.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I was going to turn it to next, because looking back at it, Clayton Kershaw going one more inning, like you said, we don't know what happens. Maybe he gets lit up, but the bruised Dark Gratterall inning likely doesn't happen because Gratterall was getting hit pretty well that inning by the Padres. But yeah, like you said, I think it was 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, 10 left on base. Just going back and looking at this, Josh, you go to the 4th inning, it's a 3-3 game. Dodgers have runners on first and second, 1 out. Trace Thompson, Cody Bellinger, they both come up. They both strike out. If one of those guys gets a base hit, Dodgers take the lead. Who knows how long the inning keeps going? I mean, they could score a couple runs. The 5th inning, Mookie Betts has the walk. He then, tries to steal the base. He gets thrown out. It was a perfect throw. And if Mookie's not, thrown out there, Dodgers have a runner on second base with no outs with Trey, Freddie, Will Smith coming up. So that was an inning that pretty much screwed them as well. Then you go to the bottom of the 6th. And I know we talked about this following the game. It's when they had back-to-back hits. Max Muncy didn't get to second base, which proved to be the difference maker. But runners on the corners, nobody out. At this point, they're trailing a run. So a sac fly, you tie the game. A sac fly, you tie the game, and it's a brand new ball game. Justin Turner strikes out. Gavin Lux hits into an inning-ending double play. Then you go to the 7th inning. Again, back-to-back hits. Dodgers have runners on second and third with 1 out, still trailing a run. All you need is a sac fly. You need a sac fly to tie the game. You have Trey Turner at the plate. A base hit likely scores 2 because you have Mookie on second base. So if Trey Turner comes up with a hit there, you have the lead entering the 8th inning. And then Will Smith comes up with the bases loaded. He lines out. And then again, you go to the 8th inning. Dodgers get 2 runners on. They bring up Austin Barnes. Now, Josh, I know we kind of criticized the Austin Barnes move after the game, but after hearing how Dave Roberts explained it, how he has the quicker swing, it makes sense. He makes better contact than some of the options, and seeing that the fact that Austin Barnes, granted, only for some reason had I think 4 at bats the entire series, actually looked like the Dodgers' second best hitter behind Freddie Freeman. That actually was the right call. But again, another situation where you're down 2 runs. A base hit there, you tack on a couple, and then in the 9th and final inning, Freddie Freeman, he gets a double, brings up the tying runs to the plate, and Will Smith, he hits one just to the warning track, and the Dodgers come up short. So, again, you can criticize, the bullpen decisions, Blake Trinan for allowing a home run, Bruce Gratterall for not having his best stuff, but looking back at Game 2, literally one swing of the bat. I know we kind of talked about if the Dodgers went 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position, they might win the game. Josh, looking at all those, possibilities, I think if the Dodgers just get 1 hit with the runners in scoring position, they win this game. Because if they go into the 8th inning up a run, I think it's a completely different ballgame. I think maybe Evan Phillips gets the 8th, maybe the bullpen's managed a little differently, but looking at Game 2, that's what did it. I mean, countless opportunities, they just couldn't get the job done, and again, we'll talk about this in Games 3 and 4, but it just one hit they needed, man. And they couldn't get it done. You hate to see it. So
yep.
That's Game 2.
That's what's disappointing. I mean, is that one of the more disappointing points of the entire series? Is a game where first of all, great game. It was a great game. Like I think Game 2 was probably one of the better games of the series. Obviously, Padres fans, depending on your perspective, they'll say Game 5. But I thought Game 3 was a heck of a baseball game. Or Game 2 was a heck of a baseball game. And you know what? So was Game 3, the 2-1 game. But that's the thing is, one swing of the bat changes everything for the Dodgers. And again, that was the difference for the Padres is that was the game where they were 2 for 11, I want to say, with runners in scoring position. I believe it was Game 2.
Yeah. I mean, all series, they were awful.
Yeah. They weren't very good either. The difference between these two teams in this series, I don't want to say it was the Padres bullpen, although they were awesome. They had not been great all season, but they were phenomenal in the playoffs. The Dodgers bullpen was pretty darn good too in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say the difference was the bullpen, maybe for an inning or two. The real difference was with runners in scoring position. The Padres had one or two more hits than the Dodgers did going into Game 4. That's the difference in the whole series up until that point.
Yeah. I mean, again, we talked about it where literally if Trey Turner, like I mentioned in the 7th inning, delivers the hit, Dodgers take the lead as Josh is trying to get the sun out of his face. Dodgers take the 2-0 series lead, and if that's a 2-0 series lead going into San Diego, that series is likely over. So again, it just goes to show all it takes is one at bat, where the Padres, the crazy thing is, they were awful with runners in scoring position all series, but like Josh said, instead of going 0 for 10, they went 2 for 11. And those 2 hits proved to be the difference maker. And Josh, before we move on from Game 2, I talked about this briefly before we started, and I just want to quickly say this right now because this happened in Game 2, and that is this rally goose that took place. Well, as you guys remember, there was that goose that flew onto the field in Game 2. There was like a 5-minute delay. At this point in the game, Josh, the Padres led 5-3. They won the game 5-3. And then in San Diego, they just adopted this goose, this rally goose, as their like postseason hero. There were fans. They were bringing in geese. I know it's, you got to be, accurate when you talk about this, but or some goo, whatever you want to call it. But the Padres were setting up these fake geese in the bullpen. There was merchandise. There was all this stuff. And I don't understand how you can back this so much. You can rally behind this so much when the goose that flew onto the field had no outcome on the game. It's not like the Padres were trailing. They rallied from behind. They won the game. Then, of course, adopt it. Like, make that your thing. But they were winning when this happened. I think it's the dumbest thing, and the fact that, like, after they won Game 4, I think, like, Blake Snell was running around with one of those fake goose, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know. I just think it's the dumbest thing. I guess if you're the Padres, you got to find something to just build off of and have fun with. But I just think, from the perspective that they were winning already, it's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. But then again, not surprising considering this is the Padres that are doing it.
I don't really get it because, like you said, they were winning. If roles were reversed and the Dodgers came back and won, and say the Dodgers claimed a rally goose, then I think you've got something there. Yeah. First of all, where did this thing come from? We think it's coming from the Swan boats at Echo Park. Is that where we think it came from?
I'd have to read an article to see like what happened. Like, how does that end up in Dodger Stadium? So who knows? Yeah. But
I mean, do you remember like a year or two ago, there was the fox that was on the field at the ASU football game. And they said that apparently it lives on campus near Hayden Library, and that people see it all the time, and it just scampered into the football stadium for the first time ever in the middle of like a huge game.
Right.
That goose lives in the rafters of the upper deck at Dodger Stadium in the top of the park store and just flutter down on the field. First of all, I will say this. As you know, as we've mentioned a few times now, this past week was our opening weekend in the NHL and the American Hockey League. So I spent a lot of this series listening on radio or watching on my phone. Now, I watched the whole series. I watched every game, but there were and I did go back to watch a few different things, but I spent not a lot of time. I would say I listened to probably 9 innings of the entire series in the car, listening to Charlie and Rick, and that half inning, despite no runs from the Dodgers, was the most entertaining inning of all of the ones that I've listened to on Dodgers radio. My God, Charlie was losing his mind. It was like, there's a duck on the field. And then Rick would say, and that trip around the diamond is brought to you by Daniel's Jewelers. And he just like completely go back into it. And then they start talking about how Randy Johnson exploded a bird with a fastball, and they were like, this isn't on that level yet. Oh my God. It was something to behold just listening to the two of them, because of course Charlie is now showing all this energy about this goose or what he thought was a duck. And Rick's just like, yeah, and they're going to pitch him away here. It was really cool. Spot back and forth. It was like Bob Costas and Ron Darling in the playoffs too, where Bob Costas is going on this long poetic, like, descriptor of a pop fly that went foul past first base, and Ron Darling's like, here comes a fastball. And then it was just It was remarkable.
I'm sure it was. I wish I can go back and listen to it somehow. But those were also perfect. Like you nailed how both of them sound and react. Where Charlie's just he probably thought that the goose is getting ready to fly over the left field pavilion as he gets tackled like on the third base side where he Steinered it still. And then Rick Monday's as monotone as it could be. So all right, so Josh, that's game 2. Let's move to game 3 real quickly. This is an overall ugly game. The Dodgers lose 2-1. If you were to say prior to the game that the Dodgers pitching staff would allow 2 runs and only 7 hits, I'd say, wow, the Dodgers are going to win this game with ease. Josh, it was anything but ease because the Dodgers scored 1 run. They scored 1 run, which came courtesy of a sacrifice fly. So Tony Gonsolin gets the start in game 3. I don't think we talked about this because we didn't do a recap following game 3, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Everyone, myself included, thought the Dodgers were going to go to Tyler Anderson for game 3. It made sense as he's been one of the Dodgers' best pitchers all season. Tony Gonsolin has only made 1 appearance over the last 2 months, and I think it was only like a 2-inning outing to close the season. So everyone thought Tyler Anderson would be the easy decision. They opt to go with Tony Gonsolin. It's an absolute disaster. He only goes 1 1/3 of an inning, allows 4 hits, allows a run, walks the guy, has a strikeout. But he had no command. The fact that he only allowed 1 run was a miracle in itself. He just looked horrible. So Josh, again, it's easy to look back and say you would change a lot of things. But again, most people thought that Tyler Anderson should have gotten the ball in game 3. Now, not that it makes that much of a difference considering the Dodgers only allowed 2 runs, but it kind of shook up things from the beginning because it forced the Dodgers to bring in Andrew Heaney early on. Obviously, he's only built up to go 3 or so innings. So by the 5th inning, it's already a bullpen game that you're having to, dig in and use some arms where Tyler Anderson, he could have given you 5, 6, 7 innings in that game 3. So do you stand by the decision the Dodgers made to go with Tony Gonsolin in game 3, or would you have liked to seen them go with Tyler Anderson in game 3 instead?
Well, look, Blake, I think it's a tough question, and it's not as easy of an answer as people might think it is, because like you said, in reality, Dodgers give up 2 runs in 4 innings between Gonsolin and Heaney. The bullpen was perfect. And again, here's another one for you. Great outings from Almonte and Canely again. I mean, up until that 7th inning of game 4, those 2 were phenomenal. So I don't hate the decision to go with Tony in game 3. The problem here is, like you said, in an inning and a third, 42 pitches, only half of them strikes, gives up a hit on 4 runs and also walked a guy. What I figured the Dodgers might do here is go with Gonsolin as an opener almost, which is kind of what they did.
Yeah.
Go with Gonsolin as an opener. Hope that you get 2 or 3, or hope that you get even 4, but see if you can get 2 or 3. And obviously we couldn't get that from Gonsolin in game 3. Heaney came in. He was okay. Obviously he gave up a run. Again, he threw 60 pitches in 3 innings. Not, I guess, horrible, but I mean, it's not good. And only half of those were strikes. So ultimately, the fact that you get 4 1/3 from Gonsolin and Heaney, they give up 2 runs. They strike out 5. Okay. They give up 7 combined hits and a couple of walks between the 2 of them. And those 2 guys threw over 100 pitches and only half of them were strikes. And the Dodgers were still only giving up 2 runs. They did not have their best stuff. They did not look great, but it's hard to argue with essentially, let's say, 1 starting pitcher, 4 innings between the 2 of them, giving up 2 runs. Like, I don't hate that.
You'll take it.
Again,
that's something you'll take.
Exactly. You'll take it. You'll take it 100%. The fact of the matter is that the Dodgers didn't hit the ball. Their only run was a sac fly. Again, this is another game that I don't think the pitching decisions or the pitching staff as a whole is to blame. In fact, I don't think they're to blame in this series. I don't think bullpen decisions are to blame in this series. They just didn't hit the ball. So did this game feel like the must win before game 4? Oh yeah, this felt like the must win. Looking back, do you like to have Anderson go? Yeah, absolutely. But ultimately, I don't think it matters, because if you would have told me in the regular season, the Dodgers are going to give up 2 runs every single game of the season, you'd think 162-0, right? Like if your pitching staff gives up 2 runs a game, the Dodgers are scoring at least 3 every single game. And in the playoffs against the Padres, they couldn't do that. So you give them 1 run on a sac fly. Like,
yeah,
you can't argue with the pitching staff.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, is because, again, I still think they should have gone with Tyler Anderson in Game 3. But looking at it now, it doesn't make a difference because the Dodgers only scored 1 run. So even if Tyler Anderson goes, and let's say he goes 6 innings, allows a run, he's exiting and the game's tied, and it's like, well, he just wasted Tyler Anderson. I kind of get it from the perspective that, like, if the Dodgers would have used Tyler Anderson in Game 3 and they lose, then all of a sudden you're kind of hosed, where Game 4 is the bullpen game. You have Tony Gonsolin going. I do get it where maybe you pull out the victory and then Tyler Anderson takes the mound with a 2-1 series lead. But again, Josh, like we talked about, it's not the bullpen decisions that, Dave made or that the Dodgers made. Like you said, everyone was fantastic. Yancey was fantastic. Hanley was fantastic. Vesey was fantastic. It's the fact that once again, they did not hit with runners in scoring position. Yet again, Josh, we're going to take a trip down memory lane. Top of the 3rd inning. So at this point, it's what? 1-0 Padres. First and second, no outs to start the inning. Mookie Betts, top of the lineup, comes up once again. This is who you want with, runners on base. Mookie, he lines out to third base. Trey Turner, he strikes out. They intentionally walk Freddie Freeman, and then up comes Will Smith with the bases loaded. A base hit, the Dodgers have the lead. Instead, Will Smith pops out. Now, the thing, I hate to do this to Will Smith because I know in Game 4, he had a baby the day of. He drove to San Diego, or drove to LA, then I think took a helicopter back to San Diego. Outside of Game 1, Will Smith was not only bad, I saw some stat, Josh, that in the 4 games of this series, Will Smith stranded 15 runners on base. 15 in 4 games. So again, you don't want to put the blame on anyone in specific, but Will Smith had so many opportunities, multiple opportunities with the bases loaded, and if he just comes up with 1 hit right here in the 4th or in the 3rd inning, Dodgers have the lead. It's an entirely different ball game, but instead they don't get any big moments. And then again, you go to the 5th inning, Josh, runners on 2nd and 3rd, nobody out. That's when Mookie gets the sacrifice fly, brings in a run, and the Dodgers trail by only 1. And then you have the top of your lineup coming up with Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, runner on third base, sacrifice fly, base hit, hard ground ball to the other side, and you tie the game. Instead, Trey Turner pops out, Freddie Freeman grounds out, inning over, they don't get anything going. 6th inning, I'm looking at it, Max Muncy double with 1 out. It's just like the opportunities were literally, like, that's the crazy thing too, where it's not like the offense was just non-existent.
Yeah, no. I mean, it just, you weren't getting the hits. That's what's so funny, because you look back at all of these big Dodgers meltdowns over the last few years. And I'm going to start at 2017 because 2016, they lose to the Cubs. Cubs win the World Series. 15, 14, you have all these good years where you just weren't really the best team. You're best team in the West, but you weren't the best in baseball. 17, Dodgers, likely the best team in baseball. I'll say that to this day. They lose because they played the Astros. I think most Dodger fans would say, you give us a crack at that series again, we're winning. Not in 7, but I don't know how many games, but we're winning. 2018, you come around, Red Sox were red hot. I think a lot of Dodgers fans would love to have another crack at that series. 2019, there's the excuse. You know what? If that was a 7-game series against the Nationals, which that's an excuse that I give. 7-game series against the Nationals, I think the Dodgers win. 5-game series, I think the Nationals were set up better for it. 7 games, Dodgers. 20, you win. 21, you run out of gas and people were injured. 2022, I don't think Dodgers fans are asking for another crack at the Padres. I think you're asking for 1 hit. If you hit the ball one time in a clutch situation, the entire series is different. And that's not just like, it's not even an excuse, like the Padres didn't have a great series, but they hit when they needed to, and they were better than the Dodgers. But like, the fact of the matter is that you have 1 hit in this series and everything changes. Maybe that 7th inning of Game 4, maybe that 7th inning, maybe Game 4 happens exactly the way it did. But if you have a hit in Game 2, 2-0 series lead. If you have a hit in Game 3, the series is over. Like, that's how frustrating this series was, because it wasn't like the Dodgers were getting killed every game, but it certainly felt like they were, because every time there were runners in scoring position, you'd think, here it comes, and then it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they said in Game 4, which we'll transition to now real quickly, when the Dodgers took the 3-0 lead in the 7th inning, I think they said on the broadcast, this is the first time a team has had a 3-run lead since I think Game 1, because it was just a close series that no one was able to pull away. And yeah, again, we'll touch up on this when we talk about where does this rank, but like you said, if the Dodgers literally, I think the final number was 4 for 35 with runners in scoring position. Josh, if they go 7 for 35, which is still horrible, that's still awful, this is a sweep. Like just one hit in Game 2, one hit in Game 3, one more hit in Game 4, because, Josh, for Game 4, I just want to skip all the way to the 7th inning, because I feel like this is when they lost it. So obviously, that's when they were able to score an additional run to give them a 3-0 lead. But once again, bases are loaded, nobody out. The top of the lineup, everyone just got on base. And Will Smith is up with the bases loaded, no outs, 2-0 lead. He does hit a sac fly, so a run does come in. But that, looking back at this now especially, if Will Smith gets a single, hits a double, 2 or 3 runs come in, the inning continues to rally. Dodgers win this game, and they go back to Dodger Stadium for a Game 5. Because after Will Smith, Max Muncy strikes out, Justin Turner grounds out, and immediately after that inning, I'm thinking, the fact that the Dodgers were only able to get 1 run out of this entire thing, that's not going to be enough, and it's going to prove to be the difference maker. So again, every game we've talked about, there's been one moment where a base hit there is the difference maker, and in the 7th inning, if they go into the 7th with a 5-0 lead, I don't think, again, I get the Padres scored 5 runs, but given the circumstances, I don't think they come back. And I think it goes to a Game 5. So, you just talk about every single game, it was there for the Dodgers taking. And the crazy thing is, it makes no sense because, it wasn't like the offense was just non-existent, Josh. It wasn't like everyone struggled. They finished every game with 3 to 4 hits. They were hitting. They were getting guys on base with walks. They were doing everything they were supposed to. It's just that for some reason, I don't know if when you're at the plate, you look up and you see a guy in scoring position, it just rattled the Dodgers for some reason. Because during the regular season, they were number 1 in baseball with runners in scoring position. But for some reason, every time it mattered most, they folded. And again, blame Dave Roberts all you want. But the reason they lost was, like we talked about and had to go back in excruciating detail, they did not hit with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That's what it was. And, you and I are texting each other, watching that what was it, top of the 7th inning? When did they score? Top of the 7th inning. We're watching that, thinking, oh my God, a bunt, a double steal, a sac fly. Like, yes, this is it. This is it. We said they needed to do something different. This is it. And then bases loaded, no outs, and nothing, man. They get nothing. So they get the 1 run, right, on the sac fly, and that was it. And you're thinking, you know what? In comparison to what they had been doing, I will take it. That's going to come back to bite them in the butt, and it sure did. Half inning later, 5 runs,
literally.
And there you go. If they had gotten 1 hit, it's a different game.
Yeah. So there you go. There's like the quick recap of the series. Went a little longer than we thought. So we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we'll be giving player grades. We'll be talking analytics. And then we'll be talking about where this ranks amongst Dodgers collapses in October. So stay tuned for that. All right, we are back. It's time to recap how the players did in this series. Only 4 games, so not a huge sample size. But Josh, in October, 4 games, that is as big of a sample size as you need because that's all you're playing. Even if it's a 1-game playoff, however you perform in that 1 game, that's how we're going to base it off. So we're going to be talking about each player that suited up for the Dodgers, and we're going to be giving a grade 1 through 10 on overall how they did. So, Josh, we're going to kick things off. Just going to look at the top of the order. Mookie Betts, he finished the series hitting 143, OPS of 492, and he just seemed like a non-factor in this series.
Yeah, he was. I mean, 4 strikeouts and 14 at-bats. He wasn't on base all that much. He had 3 total bases in the whole series. In comparison, we'll get to Trey Turner in a moment. In comparison, I think a lot of people thought that Trey actually didn't have a great series. We'll talk about those numbers, but Trey had 14 total bases in the series, and Mookie Betts had 3. I'm giving Mookie, obviously the defense is there. He had some good base running moments. He had 2 hits. I'm gonna give Mookie a 4. I mean, and it could be worse. I'm hitting just 143 in a crucial playoff series and in crucial situations.
Yeah. It could be worse because I'm giving him a 2 because, the hits he did get, none of them were, ones to give the Dodgers a lead. I don't think he had any RBIs this series. I don't know if he had his exact numbers, but I don't think he
had
drove
one.
in a run.
He had one on a sac.
Oh, he had one.
He had the sac fly.
Oh, that's right. The sacrifice fly. But again, he had, I think you said, 4 total bases. Well, 2 of those came on that double that Trent Grisham, for some reason, dove in game 2, I think, and completely missed it. So, he might catch that. So, yeah, Mookie Betts, I'm going to 2. This is the guy you're paying $350 million for. He didn't show up. He didn't show up at all. So, yep. I'm going to give him a 2. And I feel like that might be a little generous, but Trey Turner's the interesting one because I feel like the consensus is he didn't have a great series because defensively he was horrible, and most of his production came in games 1 and 2, but he still hit 333, had an OPS above 1100. So, Josh, overall, what are you giving a grade to Trey?
I'm gonna give Trey a 7, because obviously he hits 333, stolen base. He had 2 home runs, both of them were solos, so those were his only 2 RBIs, but led the team in hits in the postseason, led the team in total bases. The problem here is 5 strikeouts and the defense. I wouldn't even say it was not good. I'd say that it was shockingly bad. So I'm going to give him a 7. That might be the highest grade I give any of the position players, but I really think that the defense detracts from this. So ultimately, did Trey have a bad series? No. Could he have had an unbelievable series? Yeah. He could have been a player that changes this series dramatically if 1 or 2 facets of his game go a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm trying to, let's see here. So after game 1, he went 4 for 14. It's not the 285 average, but again, he wasn't bad. He had a hit in every game. Defensively, he was horrible, but again, it just seemed like in those last few games especially, he just wasn't coming up when needed. Like the hits he got, it was just, it was like an infield single, just a single where it didn't really do much. So I'll give him an 8 just because, again, the fact that no one else really showed up and he did early on. I mean, if he doesn't show up in game 1, Josh, Dodgers don't win that game. So that's the thing. Dodgers actually might get swept if he doesn't show up in game 1. So I'll give Trey an 8. Freddie Freeman, this one's going to be quick. Hit 357, OPS of 1300. We both said, he'd be our MVP of the series. He was for the Dodgers, but unfortunately it just didn't matter. But he showed up.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually going to give him a 7 as well. So I'm going to give both Trey and Freddie 7s. 11 total bases. He had a couple of strikeouts. He had the big home run in game 2, and 3 RBIs, which was the most of anybody in the series too. So I'll give him all those things. The other thing to keep in mind though is that his best game offensively, other than the home run, was game 4. And then he came up in the 9th inning and didn't have a very good at-bat at all and looked like he had been checked out. So ultimately, I think that it was a good series for Freddie. I thought game 1 was bad, was really bad. And there were guys, and the series didn't have great at-bats, yet somehow still finishes hitting 357 in the series, and an OPS at 1286. So I'm going to give him a 7. But again, I think that game 2 and game 4 are carrying him a little bit. And obviously, sample size is small, so what does that really mean? Not a whole lot. But he did have a game 4 a good game 4 up until the 9th inning.
Yeah, I'll give him a 9 just because, again, he was most of the offense and he did a lot in game 2, did a lot in game 4. Like you said, game 1 had some really bad at-bats, but the Dodgers won that game, so I wouldn't read too much into it. But yeah, I mean, he was most of the Dodgers offense. I mean, he had, 3 of their 7 hits in game 4, so overall solid. Will Smith, now this is a tough one. He goes, hits 188, OPS of 489. But like I said, Josh, he left 15 on base. Where if Will Smith has 1 or 2 big hits in this series, this is maybe a sweep. So again, you don't want to single anyone out, but the opportunities were there for Will Smith more than anyone, and he just didn't deliver outside of game 1. I think he had 2 hits in that game.
Yeah, you can rely on him for pretty good catching. He only had 3 hits in the series. He had 2 doubles, okay. Of all the guys who logged more than 10 ABs, he had the fewest number of strikeouts. So I'll give him that, but he didn't come up with a big hit. I'm going to give him a 4.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's
tough.
But, and the fact that I'm giving Will Smith a 4, I'm going to drop Mookie to a 3.
Yeah. Because the thing is, he was putting the ball in play, which, like you said, he wasn't striking out, so at least he was making contact. So, you could look at expected batting average, stuff like that, but I'm going to give him a 3 just because, again, he had so many opportunities where one or two hits, the series is entirely different, and they're still playing. And again, he just didn't deliver when needed. Max Muncy hits 286, OPS at 946, but it just seemed like a very quiet. He was probably the Dodgers' third best hitter overall, but it just seemed like a very quiet series that he was, being productive. But outside of his home run in Game 2, I don't think really any of his hits were, hits to give the Dodgers the lead, tie the game, anything like that. It was just he had a double, and now he's on second base, and the Dodgers behind him obviously didn't do anything. But I thought it was a very quiet, solid series for Muncy.
Yeah, I'll give him a 6. Just because he struck out a lot in the series. He had this most strikeouts and he and Thompson each had 6 strikeouts. But in typical Muncy fashion, he has his walks. He had some big hits. Ultimately, it just wasn't where it needed to be. But you know what? After the regular season that he had to come in and actually be a moderately reliable bat in the postseason, good for him. It just didn't work out. So I'll give him a 6.
Yeah, I'll give him a 6 as well because, again, he did have solid production, but like you said, the strikeout rate was really high, and with, it wasn't like at Will Smith's level, but Max Muncy was up at the plate numerous times with runners on base, and it just seemed like he couldn't get that hit, so I'll give him a 6 as well. Justin Turner, he hit 154, OPS of 467. I think he had 2 hits for the series. One of them was, I think, like a bloop single that could have been caught, and I think his other one was just like a weakly hit single into left field that they just couldn't get to. So this is one where, again, I know he was hot in the second. He was amazing in the second half, but it looked like Father Time caught up to him in this series.
Yeah, I'm gonna give him a 2, and I'm gonna leave it at that. He wasn't great, and he's a player that, again, I think if he wants a second crack at this series, he's a player that maybe picks it up a little bit more, but he just wasn't good.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2 as well, just because, again, Will Smith, like I mentioned, he's hitting the ball hard. He's hitting it to the outfield. Justin Turner just looked, overmatched. His at-bat quality was horrible, so I'm going to give him a 2. Trace Thompson, literally exact same line as Justin Turner, hit 154, OPS of 467. Josh, you mentioned it. He was tied for the team lead in strikeouts. Did get on base a few extra times by drawing a couple walks, I think, but outside of that, this Trace Thompson was not the Trace Thompson that the Dodgers got after they acquired him. He looked like the Trace Thompson that was DFA'd by the Padres.
Yeah, he was my sleeper for series MVP if I couldn't pick Freddie Freeman, so that did not work out well. Tied for the team lead in strikeouts. I think his defense was okay. Obviously, he had that huge catch in center field that was remarkable. But there were a couple other instances where he dove for a ball that if it gets past him is probably an inside the park home run where he dives and you're like, what are you doing? And then it doesn't come back to bite him in the butt. So you'll take that, but I'm going to give him a 3 just because of that one big catch in the outfield. But again, it was a bad series for Trace Thompson too.
I think that was that Game 2 then where he had that one inning where he dove for a ball, he missed it. He then tried to rob the home run, wasn't close, and then he tried to throw out. I think Hassan came at home plate and he didn't get him. So that was a bad inning defensively where if he makes 1 or 2 of those plays, game shifted. So I'm going to give him a 2 just because, again, he didn't really provide anything. So we'll move on to that. Chris Taylor, I think this is where he may have my worst grade, Josh. He did nothing. I think he had 7 at-bats for the series, struck out in 5 of them. I mean, Chris Taylor did as much that series as you and I did.
Yeah, he's getting a 1 for me just because I'm not going to give anybody a 0, but as low as it'll go is 1 for me, and that's where Chris Taylor is.
See, I'll give him a 0, Josh, because, again, it's the fact that he did nothing. If you get a 1, I was tempted to give Trace and Justin a 1, but again, at least they did something. Chris Taylor literally provided nothing. Didn't put the ball in play at all. His defense is whatever, so I'll give him a 1. Or did I say 0? I can't even remember. I'll give him a 0. Yeah, I'll give him a 0 because that's what he deserves. Cody Bellinger hit 143, OPS of 286. Oof.
Yeah, 4 strikeouts and 7 ABs for Bellinger is not good. He had 1 hit. Obviously, somebody that you can typically rely on defensively, but he only played in 3 of the 4 games. Wasn't in the lineup. Wasn't in the starting lineup a few times in the series. The sample size isn't super large. I'll give Bellinger a 4, just because we didn't see a whole lot of him. So I think that actually brings it up a little bit. But 4 strikeouts and 7 ABs isn't going to get it done.
I'll give him a 2, just because he looked awful. I thought that we'd get postseason Belly, but we didn't. So, nope. I'm going to give him a 2. Just a few more left. Gavin Lux hit 231, OPS of 539. Now, I think Gavin Lux actually started the season or the series pretty hot. I think the first 2 games he was racking up a lot of hits, and then he just died down. But yeah, he went, MIA over the last few games of the series, and his numbers show it.
Another guy that I'm going to give a 4, just because, he had a reliable defensively, had an RBI, but again, 5 strikeouts, and it's not even that he was necessarily bad. It's that he just had 0 impact. So I'll give him a 4 to be nice.
Yeah, I'll give him a 4 just because, again, I think games 1 and 2 he was a whole lot better than he was in games 3 and 4. So not great. And I guess the only other player really to talk about, Josh, is Austin Barnes, who only had, a couple ABs. I don't have his numbers here because this is just from game 4, but I think he went 2 for 3 in, so he probably was, I think, if you have his numbers, I think he had 500 for the series. I think he was 2 for 4.
Yeah, he was 2 for 3, hit 667.
Or 2 for 3.
Obviously the sample size is small, but an OPS of 1665, and he had a double. So, small sample size. He only played in 2 games, and given the small sample size, I'll give him a 5. Or, I'll give him a 6.0, just because from what we saw, he was okay. His only out was the pinch hit where he drove it into center field.
Into the warning track.
The move to make. Yeah, that's his only out in the series. He only had 3 ABs, but that was the only out. I'll give him a 6.
See, dog, I'm gonna give him a 9 because he was the Dodgers' second best hit. He was the Dodgers' second best hitter this series. Granted, again, 4 at bats, but his 4 at bats was a fly out that literally went to the warning track in a pinch hit situation. Like you said, I think he hit a double. I think he had a single, and I think he walked as well. So the dude gave fantastic at bats given his limited sample size. The fact that he wasn't in the lineup for game 4 is just absolutely ridiculous. But we'll give Austin Barnes a 9 there, and that pretty much does it because we didn't see Miguel Vargas, we didn't see Joey Gallo, and I don't think we're missing another player. No. I think we hit up everyone. So overall, just awful, Josh, with the lineup. Again, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman both had high OPSs. Max Muncy was solid. But outside of that, the rest of your lineup, no one was good.
Nope. You're absolutely right.
No one was good. No one was good. So that's that. Now, before we move to our next break, Josh, and talk about, again, Dodgers postseason collapses, one thing I quickly wanted to touch up on and hear your thoughts are, because I wrote an article on this yesterday saying, stop listening to the computer. Stop having a predetermined plan when you enter the game. Just have a feel for the damn game. And what I mean by this is stop using analytics to determine whether or not you're going to take players out of the game. Tyler Anderson, the reason he was pulled after only 5 innings was that normally when you face a lineup for the 3rd time, you're not going to have as much of a success rate as you do when you face him earlier in the lineup. But Josh, I went back and I looked at the numbers. When Tyler Anderson faces the lineup a second time, opponents are hitting 237 off of him. When he faces the lineup for the 3rd time, would you like to take a guess as to what the opponent's average is?
210.
Not 210, so he doesn't get better, but it goes to 238. So hitters are nearly
the same.
So it's nearly identical the second time around and the 3rd time around for Tyler Anderson. It's not like they're hitting 290 off him. It's pretty much identical. And this is, again, I get it. 3rd time through the lineup, normally opponents do a lot better. But Tyler Anderson was at 85 pitches. He was in cruise control. I think he had retired the previous 10 Padres hitters in a row. I think he issued a walk in there, but he had retired 10 hitters in a row. The dude was dealing. I would have sent him out there for another inning, see what happens, have someone ready to go if he allows a base hitter, things get bad. But again, the analytics say you got to pull him. So Josh, again, you're in the dugout. You're watching Tyler Anderson shove. He's in cruise control. He's looking good. He's feeling good. If he tells you, I'm feeling good, I want to go back out there, do you let him go back out there? Or again, are you looking at what the computer says, and the computer says, well, 3rd time through the order, majority of the time, players are going to perform better.
So I will say this. Clayton Kershaw, 5 innings, 3 hits, 6 strikeouts, 80 pitches. Julio Urias, 5 innings, 3 runs, 6 strikeouts, 79 pitches. Identical. 0 walks for the 2 of them. Tyler Anderson, 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, 86 pitches. Notice 5 and done, 5 and done, 5 and done.
Mm-hmm.
You come down and you look at, the Gonsolin game, the Heaney game. That's a little bit different just because of where they've been at lately. But let's put Gonsolin and Heaney together. 4 1/3. Let's round up for the sake of my argument here, which makes no sense.
Yes.
We're going to round up and say 5 innings. They give up 7 hits combined. Between the two of them, they have about 100 pitches. We're going to pretend that was 5 innings. Kind of skews my argument a little bit. The fact of the matter is that in 3 or 4 games, your starting pitcher was looking good. Pitch count wasn't ungodly high. I don't think any of those numbers are ungodly high for how they were pitching in that moment of the game. 5 and done, 5 and done, 5 and done. Those 3 starting pitchers combined for 18 strikeouts and 2 walks. I'm okay pulling Kershaw. Julio is, it is what it is. Anderson, even though he had a higher pitch count, 2 hits. Given your argument, 238. I leave Anderson in for 1 more inning. If he doesn't make the whole inning, fine. That's kind of where I'm at with that because like I said on the last show, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but like I said on the last show, you leave Tyler Anderson in just to start the 6th inning. Just to start it. And granted, Chris Martin, fantastic as always. Chris Martin was great. If you leave Anderson in to start the 6th inning, that likely changes the makeup of your bullpen for the 7th, for the 8th, for the 9th, if you have to get there. And maybe that 7th inning doesn't go the way that it does. Granted, if you told me that you'd see Tommy Kahnle and Yency Almonte in the 7th inning, I'd say no way in hell the Padres scored 5 innings or 5 runs in the 7th inning. But they did, and it is what it is. But I'll leave that at that. The only other thing I want to say is, maybe you talked about this in your article. Look, I was talking about this yesterday with somebody at the office, and basically the way that we have viewed analytics in sports and computers' involvement in sports has changed so much within the last 15, 20 years. And for example, look at college football. And I understand that it's different, but look at college football. For the longest time, people said, get rid of the BCS, where a computer runs all the analytics. They run all the numbers, and they choose the 2 best teams in college football to play in the national championship game. We're not going to listen to a computer to tell us who's the best. So they went with the playoff and a committee who, for the most part, goes with the eye test. And what have we had ever since we've had the committee? Is the best team winning every year? Yeah, probably. The 4 teams that make the playoff? Blowouts every single year. And you and I have had this discussion on the old Harris Highlight Show time and time again. Blowouts every single year because of the eye test. In baseball, it has gotten to a point where it's like, forget about the feel of the game. Forget about the eye test. A lot of teams are saying, forget about the small ball. What does the computer tell us to do? And we have 2 completely different sports with analytics, with computers going in complete opposite directions. And obviously analytics in hockey have changed a little bit. And I don't know anything about basketball analytics, but for the sake of this argument, let's pretend I'm an expert and say that people care about that too. How is it that in different sports and in a 10-year difference, you're going in completely different directions with whether or not you listen to what the computer tells you to do? And right now in baseball, you're listening to what the computer tells you to do, and it seems like that's pretty much it. And again, we've seen this time and time and time again with the Dodgers specifically. Now, is that on Dave Roberts? I think a lot of people will say yes. I'm not so sure. I don't know if it's on Dave.
Yeah.
What power does Dave have when the computer's telling him to do something, when higher up people in the baseball operations side of the front office are telling him to do something? What is his role in that situation? Is it to listen to the computers and the higher ups, or is Dave the one who's making those decisions? I don't know. And that's another reason why I've had people ask me, especially Padres fans have actually been like, honestly, what do you think about Dave's future? I say, this series wasn't on Dave. Not at all. I don't have any issue with Dave Roberts each of these last 2 seasons. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just, as a general answer, I would have liked to see Anderson come out for at least one more, and see what we get, just because the pitching plan had gone with the same thing every single game in that series. All 4 games, it was the same plan, game after game after game after game. And ultimately, did it work? Kind of, but it didn't win you a series. Game by game, it kind of worked, but it didn't win you a series. And my problem overall is we have gone so far from, in some sports, the only thing that matters is what the computer tells you to do. And in other sports, it's forget about what the computer told us 10 years ago. We're doing something different now. And that's kind of where I'm at with baseball.
Literally, the Dodgers were on the receiving end of this years ago in the World Series because Blake Snell was in absolute cruise control, allows one base hit to Austin Barnes, and out comes Kevin Cash because, oh no, you're getting to the top of the order, he just allowed a base hit, you got to pull him and bring in bullpen arms. Whereas I still stand by this, if Kevin Cash leaves in Blake Snell, Rays might win that game, and they might win the World Series, but instead, the computer said you got to pull Blake Snell. And again, I understand when you have so much information available to you during the regular season, by all means, use it as much as you want. It's the regular season. If you want to play matchups, play matchups. If you want to go to certain guys because it says to, do it. But in the playoffs, Josh, and again, in years past, I'm getting more against it. At some point, you got to say, I don't care what it spews out that the numbers say this is better. Look at what you're watching. Again, I know we talked about, Kershaw, Julio, and Anderson all going 5 innings, but they're all kind of different 5 innings. With Kershaw, he seemed kind of gas after 5 innings, so I can kind of get pulling him, but Anderson was in cruise control. And again, look at the eye test, look how he's doing. If it looks like he's shoving, if Tyler Anderson says he feels great, you leave him in. Like we talked about, have someone in the bullpen ready where if he allows a base hit to Juan Soto, if he allows a home run to someone, then you pull him. But I think at some point, you got to say, screw with the computers churn out. I got to go with what I'm seeing with the eye test. And again, the same thing could be said an inning later when he pulled Yency Monty for Alex Vesia because, again, the computer says the matchup for Alex Vesia and Jake Cronenworth. Cronenworth has a lower... Actually, no, I actually looked it up, Josh. Cronenworth had nearly identical numbers against lefties and righties. It's just that Vesia has an insanely low average in OPS against than lefties. But Yency Almonte, he just struck out Manny Machado on like 5 pitches and made him look silly. And then he just got Brandon Drury to pop out on 1 pitch. So he recorded 2 outs in only 5 to 6 pitches. And here comes Jake Cronenworth where... I'm going with Yency Almonte. I'm sticking with him. I'm not making a change mid-at-bat. I'm not bringing in Alex Vesia, who hasn't had that much time to warm up. I'm looking at what I'm seeing with Almonte, who's been your second best reliever all season. He just got the 2 biggest outs of the season, and all he needs is 1 more. I'm sticking with him there. Now, again, I can if Vesia comes out, gets a strikeout, the move looks great, and Dave Roberts is being heralded as a genius. But again, this comes to, for me, just have a feel for the game. And I feel like Almonte actually gives you a better chance to get out of the inning.
Yeah, and we haven't even really mentioned this yet, but apparently there was a missed pickoff signal in that inning.
Yeah.
Where Vesia, I remember that you look at the bullpen and Vesia like just gets up to start warming up, and then Dave comes out. And what was supposed to happen was they were supposed to do a pickoff or 2 to try to give Vesia more time to warm up. And they didn't do that, and Almonte either missed the sign or ignored the sign and fired a first pitch, and then ultimately, it was a ball, so now it's 1-0. And then in the middle of the AB was when Dave decided to make the change instead of giving Vesia more time to warm up, and obviously it backfired just a couple pitches later. But again, I mean, I think you need to have a little bit more feel of it. And again, this is a different sport, but here's kind of where we're at with baseball, where I feel like there isn't that kind of accountability. Like, oh, the computer told us to do this, but we went with what our instinct said, or our instinct said this, but the computer told us to do that, and we did that, and it didn't work out. Last year, during hockey season, in 2 different instances, there were blowout games where it was like a 7-run difference. One game, a coach said, actually, I thought we played pretty well. We're going to go with the same lineup next game. And it was because the computer told them that analytically they played a good game. You lost by 7. You didn't play a good game, regardless of what the computer says. In another instance, same thing, where they were like, you know what? The computer said that we played a good game. We did not play well. In 2 different instances, I saw 2 different reactions from 2 different coaches based off of basically the exact same game, and they both took different things away from it. Where one was saying, forget about what the computer said, we sucked. And another one was saying, forget about the fact that we lost by 7 goals. The computer said we played well. No, you didn't. So that's kind of where we're at with baseball too, is it's like, if the computer's telling you to do something, but it doesn't feel right, like, or it doesn't look right, or you don't think it's going to go well, or you've got somebody who has not pitched well. If the computer's telling you that they should be in and maybe you don't think they should, like, where are we at right now? And I think in baseball, we're not at that balance. It seems right now we're in this full computer era. And
and like I said, during
my shelf that I got the other day called like Analytics in Baseball, and man, am I excited to read that, because I want to get help me understand that more, because there are people that legitimately have the argument, like, why would you bunt with the shift? Like, just learn to hit the other way. I'm like, I totally get that. I totally get that. But you could bunt and it's a base hit,
Agree.
things like that.
Yeah, no, like I said, during the regular season, I'm all for it. With the information you have on everything, like, use it to your advantage. But at some point, you need to go away from that. You need to have a feel. And even, Josh, not even talking about the pitching, because, again, Dave Roberts isn't to blame for this series. If they get hits, they win. If Almonte or Canely just do their job, they win. But even if you look at, like, the starting lineup, Joey Gallo, who, again, didn't have a great season this year, didn't have a great year last year. If you need a home, like, Josh, your life's on the line, and you need 5 players to hit a home run, Joey Gallo is maybe one of the 5 players you're looking at to hit a home run, because he probably has more power than anyone in baseball, and he has the chance to drive into one. I mean, we've seen, I think he hit like 8 or 9 homers with the Dodgers, but yet for some reason, the dude isn't bat during the postseason. Again, that's because he's awful against lefties, and there are just other hitters on the team that are better against righties. But it's at what point, Josh, do you say, you know what? I'm going to say, screw the numbers. I just need 1 run. It's not like the Dodgers are down 4 or 5 where you don't bring him up. You're down 1 run. You need a home run. Is Gavin Lux going to hit a home run? No. Is Justin Turner going to hit a home run? No. Is Cody Bellinger going to hit a home run? Is Chris Taylor going to hit a home run? Likely not. Joey Gallo gives you the best chance to drive one out, and he just remains on the bench, where, again, you just got to feel for it. So, I understand it. I get the reason why, but I thought this series especially, have a feel for the game, and maybe it's a different series. But then again, if they just hit, then it's a sweep. So we're going to take one final break. We're going to come back, and we're just going to quickly talk about where this loss in the postseason ranks among the Dodgers' worsts. All right, so we're back from break. Josh, before we end this sad show where we just, keep talking about how bad the Dodgers are and how much they've broken our hearts, we're going to talk about where this, I was going to say, to get even better, we're going to talk about where this ranks among postseason exits. Now, we have a decade's worth of Dodgers just getting bounced in the postseason year after year, but especially it seems like over the last 5 or so, they've been more painful than the ones from like 2013 to 2016 or so. So, Josh, I'll throw it to you first. Where does this postseason exit rank for you amongst all of the Dodgers postseason exits that you can remember?
Well, I'll keep this short. Which one stings the most? 2017, because it was against the cheating Astros, who weren't punished, really at all. Which one is the most disappointing? This one, by far. I think it's not close. You win 111 games. You rank at the top of nearly every single category for offense, for pitching. You're number 1 in all of those things. You're playing against a team who you beat 15 times this year.
Yeah.
And you can't win a playoff series against them, against a team that you had dominated, not just this season, but the last 3 years. A team without one of their top players, without their poster boy. They bring in Juan Soto, and Manny Machado and Juan Soto. There's all this talk about how this is the team to beat, and Tatis is coming back, and Tatis gets in trouble, and he's out for the rest of the year. And you play them at Dodger Stadium, and you embarrass them after they add Juan Soto, and they're feeling good about themselves. You beat up on them the rest of the season, and you get in the playoffs, and you play like that. After winning 111 games, after being the best team in baseball by far, after having the highest run differential since 1939 or 1938, I think, as we said on our last show, I think it's a bigger disappointment than the Mariners. The Mariners made it to the ALCS. They lost to a team going for their 4th straight World Series title. They didn't lose to a team who's now making the NLCS for the first time in 24 years. Like, it's different. And I think it's worse for the Dodgers. So I do think that which one stings the most? 2017 World Series lost to the Astros, because I think that the Dodgers rightfully would have won that World Series. Which one is the most disappointing? This one, it's not close.
Yeah. See, the crazy, even with the 2017 one, it's like looking back on it, that one stings. But, at the time, we didn't know it. We didn't know what was going on. So the Dodgers lost, in the Game 7 to the World Series. So even that, it's like, well, you made it as far as you can go. You made it, to Game 7 and the Astros win. So even then, it's like, it sucked. but it wasn't like you weren't like waking up going, I'm pissed, because again, we didn't know what happened until a couple years later. But yeah, Josh, I just want to quickly go back to 2015 because that's when this kind of really this like dominant run started. So 2015, they lose to the Mets in the NLDS. That's the Daniel Murphy series, as I'm sure you remember, where Daniel Murphy just turned into a god. But even Josh, in 2015, the Dodgers lose to the Mets. The Dodgers won more games in the postseason than they did this year. At least the Dodgers pushed that to a game 5. So that 2015 team, they won 2 games still. But again, the Mets, they went on to be in the World Series. They were just the better team. 2016, Dodgers losing the NLCS to the Cubs. That went to 6 games, but that was the Cubs team of destiny. They weren't going to win that series, and you can't be too upset about that. Obviously, you have 2017. Then you have 2018. Dodgers losing the World Series to the Red Sox. The Red Sox were the better team. Like, we knew it. They knew it. They were the better team. Can't be too upset by that. 2019 is when they lose to the Nationals. Like you said, I still think if that series goes 7, that's a series the Dodgers win. But that was a series where the Nationals, like, they didn't look like the wild card team. Like, they went, punch to punch with the Dodgers, and they were a good team. Like, it was embarrassing to lose the way they did because of the way the Dodgers lost in Game 5. They had that 2-run lead in the 8th inning. I think that, like, stung the most. But overall, for a series, it was a competitive series, and the Nationals were a damn good team. So that one was at the top just because of how Game 5 went down. But 2020, they win. 2021, again, they pushed the Braves to 6, but again, they ran out of gas. They had so many guys injured. It just seemed inevitable that they would lose. But then you come to 2022, most wins ever in Dodgers history. I think 4th most, in baseball history. Best run differential in over 80 years. The largest, again, thanks to Joe Davis for this stat, but the largest win gap between teams in a postseason series since 1906. And Josh, you hit it perfectly. They dominated this team all season. Even going back to last season, they won 15-19 this year, but going back to last season, it's like they won 24 of 29, something like that. So pure domination, and the fact that the Dodgers lost 3 in a row, their big bad offense forgot how to hit. So when looking upon all of these, even the Astros won, Josh, which the Dodgers still, they had their chance in Game 7. They did lose Game 2 at home. They do say that the Astros weren't cheating on the road, so the Dodgers did lose 2 games at home. I think this is worse than 2017, and I think this is the most humiliating Dodgers exit. And like I said in the tweet, I think it's the biggest failure in baseball history, given all the circumstances that we talked about, the fact that they won only 1 game. Again, if the Dodgers lose in the World Series, you lose in the World Series, I don't think the season's a failure. Losing the NLCS, depending on how it goes down, not quite meeting expectations, but at least you made it to the NLCS. Not making it out of the NLDS is just embarrassing. It's humiliating. And again, I think this is by far the worst. And I don't think there's a close second. Like, I honestly don't.
I agree.
I get the 2017 argument, but Dodgers still, they didn't come through. They didn't win when they should have. So I think this is by far the worst. But I guess, Josh, the only good news out of this is they can only go up, right?
Yeah,
they can only
really,
go up
right?
from here. Right? I mean,
They
I don't know
should.
how I don't know how you can get. And even if the Dodgers would have lost to the Mets, at least you're losing to a Mets team that won I think like 101 games. Whereas you should still beat them, but you're losing to a team that won 100 games that has like a Scherzer or a DeGrom. Worst case scenario across the board. So Josh, I think it's the worst, but we'll see. So that wraps up this episode. Josh, any parting words before I close things out? Anything you want to just say about this season, since we're going to crumble it up and just, throw it in the fire?
Since we're just going to crumble it up and throw it in the fire, this will add a little bit more tinder for you, for Dodger fans out there. All of those years we just mentioned, the Dodgers either won the World Series or lost to the team who won. So do with that info as you wish.
Here's one for you, Josh. I saw this on a Twitter last night. The Padres, in their history, every time they've hosted an All-Star game, 6 years following that, they've made the World Series. And in 2016, they hosted the All-Star game, and now they're potentially going to. I think they've hosted 2 All-Star games, and each time they were in the World Series 6 years later. So
Crazy.
Will this be the third? And like you said, that streak with the Dodgers, where I think since 2016, yeah, they've either won or they lost to the team that eventually won. So by that means, the Padres are your World Series champions, which in that case, God help us. So that wraps up the entire postseason. Hopefully, we don't have to talk about this ever again. Again, we might have some episodes where we bring on some guests where we kind of have to dive back in and talk about it a little more. But that'll be it for Josh and I. Unfortunately, couldn't have a longer postseason run. We were talking about better things, but it's going to be a crazy offseason, Josh. We're going to have a lot of fun episodes talking. I have a lot of conspiracy theories for the offseason in regards to what the Dodgers can potentially do, so you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that. Again, you guys can follow us on social media at Inside the Ravine, on Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok. You guys can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and the Odyssey app. Just search Inside the Ravine. Lots of Dodgers content coming for you this offseason, so you definitely want to stick around and catch all of those episodes. This has been Inside the Ravine with Josh Schaefer from beautiful Pasadena, California. He's not moving anytime soon, so Josh, we'll see if we get you in different locations as the offseason goes on. I know it's been a couple episodes since you've been moving, so we'll see how long you stick there. But as always, for Josh Schaefer, this has been Blake Harris. Thank you guys so much for listening. We really do appreciate it. Find us all over social media. Make sure to give us a review, give us 5 stars on those apps, and as always, enjoy the rest of your week wherever you may be.